Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining Cafecito Chats. Once again, happy Hispanic Heritage Month. We started Hispanic Heritage Month September 15th and it runs through October 15th. The reason for that, if you didn't know, is a lot of Latino countries actually got their independence or celebrate their independence between the September 15th date to October 15th. So that's more or less the idea behind it. And also, the Dia de la Raza, which used to be Christopher Columbus's day, was October 12th. So that's kind of how it stretches all the way to the October 15th date. So a little history there, little nugget there. So today we're going to be talking about leading with corazon, celebrating Hispanic heritage through leadership, right? What does that really mean? Well, we as Hispanics and ship members have values, familia, comunidad, and respect. And some of those values, actually all of those values, have to shape the way that we actually have our leadership and how we lead with those values on hand. We also want to highlight and indicate if there's any Hispanic leaders that we actually look up to and really admire, and what type of leadership do they embody, right? Those leaders could be from business, education, and or community leaders. We will also talk about how we as individuals want to inspire the next generation of Hispanics to continue moving forward. And in this forum, obviously STEM, right? That's more or less our mission. So that being said, we're going to see, Mindy, what does leading with Hispanic values mean to you? And how do you see yourself reflected in that aspect?
That's a really good question. I was kind of thinking about that because it feels at times kind of a nebulous concept, but I really think it means leading with authenticity, for me personally, I look very white. I portray as white if you were to meet me in person, right? For anyone who knows me. And I live in a very Hispanic state. New Mexico's probably about 60 to 70% Hispanic. And so for the longest time, I did not connect with my cultural identity until I left my state and went to school on the East Coast. And what I discovered by getting outside of that comfort zone was my culture was very important to me and was a part of who I was, even though when I was in a majority culture of Hispanics, I didn't realize how that shaped me as a person until I left it. And so, what I've done as a leader since is embracing my culture and just understanding and embracing those differences, whether it's that intense kind of family need, that need to get together for meals, talk with one another. And I bring that to my leadership styles, whether it's at work or in nonprofits, of bringing a familia-like attitude in any setting that I'm in, because that's part of my culture and that's part of who I am authentically. And so for me, it's bringing those pieces of me that I didn't even realize were pieces of me until I really got outside of and realized in a different state where it's like, oh, these things are important to me. I didn't even realize they were a part of my background until I was in a completely different culture.
That's interesting. So you were in New Mexico, majority, Latinos, Hispanics there. All of a sudden you go to the East Coast and can you kind of run us through a little bit of an example as to when and how that aha moment came to you?
Funny enough, it was during a summer program, and I didn't feel like I should have joined SHIP in particular because I didn't really connect with that aspect. And what's kind of unique about New Mexico, and I think kind of similar to California, is we are very Latino by nature in our states. It's very ingrained in our states' cultures because Santa Fe existed way before the United States did. And I never even connected with being Latino because our area is so conglomerated of Native Americans, that Spaniard conquistador aspect, and Mexican. I was like, I didn't feel like I was Mexican because I didn't grow up in Mexican culture. I very much grew up in New Mexican culture. And it took a while to learn what it meant to be a Latina because I never had connected that just by my state's demographics and how my state formed in particular.
Mm.
But when I left it, it was like, whoa, I didn't even realize these things were core to my values. New Mexico is kind of known for being land of mañana, which is very Latino culture, right? And so those things I didn't even realize were pervasive in my upbringing, that were part of Latin culture, I didn't realize until I left that Latin culture. But yeah, New Mexico is really interesting because you'll find most people don't connect with being Mexican or Latino because their families have been in New Mexico since the 1600s.
Mhm.
And so that sense of identity is just not necessarily the same in a lot of other places I've visited in the US.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very interesting. We'll shift over to Paul. Mr. Paul Montoya, how's it going, sir? How are you? Any insight in regards to the Hispanic heritage and also how we are leading through some of those values that we shared earlier: familia, community, and respect?
Uh, yeah, I'm gonna go with Jaime Escalante.
Okay.
Um, pretty inspired with that book, with that movie. I think I watched it when I was in high school.
Little
And
parentheses for those of you who are listening, watching, don't know what he's talking about. This is going back to like 1982, 84, when Jaime Escalante back in the East LA, he actually helped a whole bunch of students. And there's a movie called Stand and Deliver. So go ahead,
yeah,
Paul.
so um, so that was so when I have a unique story, kind of similar to Mindy. I grew up in Arizona. I'm actually a sixth generation Arizonian. Um, uh, my kids have the best of both worlds because my wife's originally from Guatemala, and so they have on one they have one parent who's a sixth generation Arizonian, and then they have another parent that was born in a Latin American country. So they're I'm hoping that well grounds them and makes them humble. But when I went to high school, North Phoenix, I think it was like maybe 2% Hispanic, something like this. I didn't learn what it meant to be Hispanic really until I went to college, Arizona State, big large, joined the ship chapter, because I was like, oh, I'm Hispanic, I'll join, see what's going on here, and that's when I learned, that we have a lot of challenges. Like I met some of the leadership. They were from the LA area, and they were talking about how they had best friends that were killed right in front of them as a result of gang violence that was pretty prevalent in the 90s. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, well, gosh, we were renting games from Blockbuster, trying to trying to win some Dragon Warrior game, pulling an all nighter. We weren't getting shot on the streets. That was a real wake up call a little bit. And and so yeah, that Stand and Deliver movie kind of exemplifies some of that. What it's you go to school and there's gangs in your schools, and there's gang members in your schools. The teachers are getting uh, uh, what do you call it, threatened, and whatever. These big fights. I mean, we had fights in my elementary school and college, but we never got shanked. you know what I mean. So, but yeah, in terms of Hispanic role models, I mean, I mean, there's plenty. I mean, we stand on the shoulders of titans, or whatever. So you always have to remember that we didn't get here alone. Especially the newer generation and the younger kids, it's like they just take it for granted. They don't realize that, especially now that DEI is under attack and all that jazz. It's guys, you know, I I understand you think the problem's solved, uh, but it's not. It's not solved, and you can see that um, mathematically once you start running the numbers. How many Hispanics in positions of leadership? How many Hispanics are running the Fortune 100 companies? We're still very much in the minority, and we're now the majority. So you remember back in 2000 when they said by the year 2020, the Hispanic purchasing power is going to be X. It's going to flip. It's going to happen. And I don't know if people thought that just when as time moved on that these problems were just magically going to be solved because Hispanics are become the majority. That high school I went to that was 3% Hispanic when I went to in the 90s is now 98%, 99% Hispanic. You know what I mean? So we have now become the majority, But I don't think that's reflected in corporate America. And it may have a different name, diversity, innovation. We'll call it whatever you want. But if you're a ship member, I think your tuition should be free. You know what I mean? That's my grandiose vision I have for the organization. It's like, hey, when you guys have your board meetings, why don't you ponder this one? If you're a ship member, I want your tuition free. Figure out a way to make that happen. Oh, you're talking to Bill Gates? Drop that one on him for his foundation to help fund for the next 20 years. And I think the membership will thank us.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Great insight, great perspective.
Yeah.
Mindy, and you bring up good points. We have a little more experience than the younger generation, and we have seen and we have lived through some of the affirmative action situations, and now we're going through this DEI attack, right, to some extent, of what you kind of alluded to there, Paul. But I want to focus to see if Victor and Lourdes, and let's go with Lourdes first. First of all, thank you for joining. Do you see Hispanic leading with some of the core values that we mentioned: familia, community, and respect? Is that true? How do you see that? And also, have you reflected on the affirmative action and the DEI situation that has been brought up during this conversation? Lourdes?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in San Diego, mainly Escondido, which is predominantly like Latino. Not just Latino, it's like all different countries are represented as well, like Latin American countries. So it made you aware of like, yes, I'm Mexican, but I can also know about like pupusas and everything else, and just being welcoming about everything. For me, it was Stand and Deliver as well, but also it was Sandra Cisneros with House on Mango Street and some other books. We also had a really like DEI really provided like in high school we had like advanced Spanish literature class, and our literature professor or teacher, she was amazing, and she really made us see ourselves in a different vision to like you can be successful and still retain your identity, not like assimilate in the way. Um so I benefited greatly from all the DEI resources that were available in middle school and high school and even in college. I think I graduated back in 2021, so it's like before all these attacks a little bit. I mean, you kind of think about the consequences and how people, the support that I had back in the day, it's not going to be there for the next generation. Yeah, so just a lot to think about. And it was beneficial, it helped me a lot. So it just makes me sad that it's not going to be there. But we can do something about it and make it better, maybe in a few years.
Okay, we can do something about it. That's a great kind of segue that we'll touch upon while we explore the last question that we have here. How can we inspire? What can we do for the next generation? But we'll talk about it in a little bit. Going over to Victor. Victor, I know that you grew up in Chula Vista, but from your perspective, as a recent UCSD grad with an awesome new job over at Relativity, you just moved up to LA. I'm pretty sure you're seeing how the LA contrast between San Diego, Chula Vista area is up in the LA area. Can you talk to us about your perspective in Hispanic heritage leadership, using and relying on some of the core values as familia, community, and respect, and also chime in any insights in regards to any of the individuals that you look up to as role models?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely moving here to the Long Beach area. I'm actually in an area that's predominantly Hispanic, so it's been very easy to just basically like stay within the culture. So, for example, like my landlord, he's Mexican, and we just like talk in Spanish, so that's been really helpful. For me, one of the most important things to retain my heritage is obviously speaking the language. I think that's a great way of doing it. And with regards to like role models, I mean, I keep saying this, but like my mom is my role model. So I really look up to her. But most recently, uh, I became familiar with, I forget his name, but the person from A Million Miles Away. Like just his story was just so motivating, and that's a person that I'm definitely looking up to. It shows like all the core values. Just not giving up. Pursue your dreams, and just chase greatness. And that's something I want to do for myself. And yeah,
Yep. Thank you, Victor. So the character from A Million Miles Away is Jose Hernandez, the astronaut, and he's played by Michael Pena in the movie itself, A Million Miles Away. So that's Victor's role model. So that's great. That's great insight. Thank you for sharing that. Mr. Mike Cruz, going over to you. You've heard the conversation so far. Any insight from your perspective about leading with Hispanic heritage values and also talking about some of the role models that some of the individuals have brought up?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. All good.
Okay. Yeah, I was a late bloomer. I didn't realize I was Hispanic until I was in my mid-20s.
Okay.
I was like, man, I grew up in San Diego in a mixed neighborhood. Being a Mexican American was not outstanding in the schools that I went to. They were all mixed. We had all denominations, as well as a high school at Castle Park. We had very few Hispanics. So it was like a white culture that I grew up in. And in the military, it was the same way. I wasn't outstanding as a Mexican American, et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't until I think I joined SHIP in the 80s, and I was already in my late 30s, that first of all, realizing that you were Hispanic was a aha moment for me later on in life. It was like in my 20s, when I was actually got involved with SHIP and working with more Hispanic students. But my two basic role models, I guess I had three, and Jaime Escalante was surely one, because that was what kind of brought forth the trials and tribulations of being a minority. And the other two examples that I had was Franklin Chang Diaz, the first Hispanic astronaut, and Dr. Ellen Ochoa, a Hispanic woman astronaut. And Ellen is from San Diego. So those were my two, people that I said, hey, these people are really, they can do it. They made it successful. So being Hispanic was a late acknowledgement in my life. And my grandparents are everybody. Most of my family members spoke Spanish, but in my household, we lost the language. And like Victor said, I said, if you have the language, you have the culture. So I lost a lot of that in the beginning. So I was a late bloomer, and being Hispanic now means more. But the realization is that, yeah, we're here. Like Paul says, my school was 1% Hispanic, and now it's probably 80 or 90%. We're here, but you got to remember, back then we only had 200 million people, and now we got almost 360 million. So our numbers are growing. We're being more aware of, but also the realization is that there's more pushback from the other side about being Hispanic and being culturally acceptable in our society. So we just have to stand our ground, be what we are, do as well as we can, and move forward. So I have great hopes that there'll be more Hispanics in leadership positions. We're there, but we're not there. When I was involved in metrology and working with the Navy, I would go into the big conference rooms, and I would look around, and I would be the only Hispanic and maybe one black and no women. So I think we've come a long way from that, but we still need to work at it. So I'm proud of who I am. I can say, yeah, I'm Hispanic now. It's kind of weird saying that, but it only, I don't know. It just doesn't, I mean, unless you're in an environment where they acknowledge being Hispanic is Hispanic, that's there. But when you go out into the real world, you're just another person.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that world, we have to be that other person, but we also can remember our cultural identity and move back into that arena as much as we can.
Thank you, sir. Good insights. Lourdes, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I wanted to add, say the same thing as Victor and Mike about speaking Spanish in the household or keeping the language. I don't know if it happens in Chula Vista, but in Escondido, they have dual like speaking classes, like both English and Spanish for the little kiddos.
Right.
So they get taught how to speak, write, and read from like kindergarten to like sixth grade or something. And we continue that with my baby nephews and in the household as well to retain as much as we can from the language.
It's awesome. That's great insight. It's interesting that you bring that up. A little parenthesis here. So dual immersion, I remember started popping up in the Chula Vista area back in 2004, more or less. It actually, interestingly enough, Sylvia Acevedo, who was the girl who used to be the Girl Scouts of America CEO back in President Obama's time frame. She was one of the instrumental individuals. She's also a SHIP member or still very active and supportive of SHIP. She was instrumental in running and bringing the dual immersion program that you know, Lourdes, going back to the 80s and 90s, when I think Paul, Mindy, and myself, we actually went through this program called bilingual ESL, English as a Second Language program, right? For me, actually, I think I might have been the only one out of the three that actually went through that program. It was it was horrible, to be honest with you. It wasn't what dual immersion is now. So I literally had a stigma in the label that prevented me, one, from taking any advanced classes in elementary school, middle school, because I was labeled as English as a second language learner. And based on that, you were put on this track back when I was going through those years in school, and it prevented you from taking any advanced classes. That being said, when I first started, it was literally learning the colors, counting 1 through 10, and rinse and repeat, essentially, right? My dad went to the principal and said, hey, he's really not advancing, not learning much. I want him or want my children to be put in on all English class to see if we can push that effort and keep them going and pull them out of that track scenario that they had placed me in, right? There was a lot of resistance, but my dad went, had meetings, pulled me out of the school. We went to another school. And once they actually placed me in a class, I think they had a report or some sort of note that said this kid or this individual is actually, an English learner. So when they actually put me in this English only class, the teacher obviously went around, started handing sheets of paper with instructions that I couldn't read, and I couldn't really understand what she was saying. And all of a sudden she pulls back, she snatches the paper away from my desk, and she gives me a blank sheet of paper with a box of crayons, right? And so she said dibuja, and however she could, and that was that. I felt horrible when that happened, and I didn't feel horrible for me. I felt more horrible because my mom was present watching this play out, and I felt horrible, and I felt angry, and I felt that I needed to do something. So that being said, when I got pulled out, my dad put me in another school. It's another elementary school. So I literally went ahead and said, I need to do better. And my dad said, how can I help you? And going back to the 80s, 90s, there was no Google, no Chat GPT, no computers, literally. So it was literally encyclopedias and dictionaries. And I said, I need a dictionary for translating. So I literally translated all my homework from English to Spanish, wrote and did whatever writing I needed to do in Spanish, and translated it back. So eventually I started picking up the language, and that's more or less how I started becoming a little more fluent in English. And that's a little bit of a snapshot of what the bilingual program experience that I had in my childhood was. So fast forward like 20 years when my kids are born, right? I have this idea, this stigma of the bilingual program. So I was a little skeptical about the dual immersion program. And my kids, at the age of whenever they were ready, 6 years old, whenever they were ready to go into kindergarten, first grade, I wasn't too sold on the dual immersion program. So I asked the principal from the elementary school that I needed, my wife and I wanted to go and see and experience and talk to the kids and see and sit in a class. I took a day off from work to be able to do this and to understand and leverage from kindergarten all the way to fifth, sixth grade, the progression that they actually had and how this program actually evolved and worked, right? So that was my attempt to go ahead and secure the experience that my kids were going through if they actually were go through this dual immersion program. And I know I'm making this a longer story because this was a very impactful situation for me. And fast forward to now, Samuel graduated high school and he's at UCSD. So I think he did well, and I think that we took the right decision at the time to insert him into the dual immersion program because it has definitely changed. It is a different program. It's not the bilingual program that I experienced. So, in a nutshell, that's the takeaway. So, learn and try it out. And even though if there's some bad experiences somewhere, as parents or as individuals, we got to continue moving forward. And that's why this whole Hispanic Heritage Month is important because we have to pave the way and we have to lead by example. And we have to understand that there's been obstacles that each and every single one of us has and will have. And that's where we get to the third point. How do we inspire the next generation of Hispanics to, in this case, in STEM, to pursue STEM, to continue moving forward, to continue leveraging what we have experienced and moving forward? All of us are ship members, Paul, Mr. Mike Cruz, Mindy, Lourdes, Victor, to some extent, right? We also are all leaders. We've all held board positions, with the exception, I believe, Victor, you're the only one that hasn't actually had a ship position, but you are part of teams over at UCSD for the Rocket Propulsion Lab. And all of us have that ability to go ahead and share our experiences and what we've learned and how we've been successful. So I want to ask the question of Paul. We'll focus on you. How do we continue inspiring the next generation of Hispanics to pursue STEM, to be successful in STEM, sir?
Yeah, so um, I think the answer is easy, to be honest with you. It's one of those things that, I think it was Mike Cruz I was having this conversation with, and the hardest ship job I ever had was when I was student chapter president of a large university chapter, 150 plus members, and an inactive e-board. Probably because of my own leadership. I didn't know how to inspire people back then to help me out. So me and the treasurer ran that entire club for that whole year. And it was hard, right? Managing a budget of 40,000, having 150 members, managing all the meetings, making sure we took 60 souls to a conference, making sure 60 souls came back. I mean, it was a lot of pressure. It was really hard. When I went up through the ranks, I was fortunate enough. I became a regional leader, became a vice national student representative. I'm a glutton for punishment, so I did national student representative after that, and it became easier. And the reason it became easier is because I was working with motivated individuals. So when you ask me a question, and in those additional positions of leadership, being on the regional and national board, we ran into issues. Like back then, the issue was, oh, we need more attendance at our conferences. So I was like, okay, that sounds pretty easy. All I did was get the presidents together once a month. I called it the In-N-Out Burger experience. We went to UCSD or someplace in LA. I get the student as many presidents as we could. I pull the jump on the couch Tom Cruise moment while we're eating our In-N-Out burgers, and I say, everyone run in this direction because that's what we're doing this year. And when I did that, we used to have a conference in the fall called West Coast. It was like a mini NTCC. For 10 years in a row, the membership was 250. That year that I told the presidents to run in the same direction, numbers spiked. They doubled to 500. They're like, oh, that's a thing we should do, and we should talk to our membership about it. So we doubled the membership. So there's 150 things that the ship organization can do, and I think, and they should put together what I talk about, think tanks on how to solve those problems. Like back then, I wasn't a trained engineer. I didn't know how to break down problems the way engineers do today, using the scientific method to solve hypotheses. So I think we should brainstorm. We should come up with the 150 or the N number of Hispanic issues that we want to solve. Come up with a solution to those problems in the form of think tanks. Like this group. Pretend like we're on a committee and our job is to how to help more students go into STEM, and say that was our job. We have to spend an hour and solve this problem, or a couple hours, couple sessions. Well, for me, it's easy. I got 4 kids. I saw Underwater Dreams documentary. I saw Spare Parts Hollywood feature. Robotics programs solves the STEM problem. If you go through a Lego kit robotics program, K through 12, I learned this by both watching those movies, meeting those instructors, meeting those people, befriending the actors, and having 4 kids, that when you go through a robotics program, it just bleeds STEM majors, just bleeds it. So now I'm like, okay, Carl Hayden High School. Like, how cool would it be for you to make a Hollywood feature about your experience on a robotics program in high school? That happened for these guys, for Lorenzo, I forget the other guys' names, for those 4 guys that movie was based upon. And that was Carl Hayden. That was right here in Phoenix. And I was like, I'm from Phoenix. I'm going to go meet these guys. I'm going to meet the teacher. I'm going to go check out the program. I did all that. And it turns out the teacher who ran that Carl Hayden robotics program, he was actually Iranian. And that was just coincidental, but he loved the robotics program and he did it. And I asked him, he was a little bit older, getting close to retirement. I go, what would you need to would you be willing to document what you did if somebody from government decided to roll that out in every public school, K through 12? Would you be willing to document how you did it so that we could do that coast to coast? And he said, number one, he said he would. And then the second thing we talked about was funding. So we were just kind of brainstorming, but that's what I'm talking about. People are already doing it. Just learn the government should learn what they did, duplicate what they did, use organizations like SHIP to help implement and keep us sustainable, use organizations like the Gates Foundation, what have you, to fund it, and we'll beat China. Mic drop, next challenge.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that insight. Going over to Mindy Farrell. From your perspective, Mindy, how do we, or what can we do to inspire the next generation of Hispanics to continue pursuing careers in STEM and or be successful?
On this front, I definitely agree with Paul, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so involved in my SHIP chapter, even though I have young kids. I think there was a couple of years where we really focused on the collegiate when we should have been focusing on the entire pipeline as an organization, because it all blends together, right? And maybe one of my frustrations sometimes with SHIP is we don't leverage our professional chapters as much as we can. But I've noticed when I've worked in Colorado and in New Mexico, when we got a really stable professional chapter, our college chapters started thriving. When our college chapters started thriving, we were able to get more Noche de Ciencias, more high school involvement. Now, like in New Mexico, we have high school Noche de Ciencias. Now we're going down to the middle school level. So we're starting at exposure in middle school, high school getting more in depth on the workshops, support through college. Now we have a robust network of professionals, but I do believe there's that building of part of it's just exposure. And like Paul said, there's lots of groups doing this, and a lot of times it's just coming together of saying, hey, I know you're running this program, can we learn from each other? And sometimes I think it's not about competing but working together. So like I work with so I don't think SHIP has the best K through 12 programming. I think NSBE does a much better job. I partner with our NSBE chapter here in New Mexico because they have an excellent K through 12 where they do first robotics. And so I help bring more students to that, which brings into that, right, the attack of DEI. I'm big on the inclusion part of DEI, which means coming together and respecting our differences but embracing our differences and bringing inclusion of like, you don't have to be Hispanic to join, you don't have to be Black to join. I'm like, look at me, do I look like a Black person? No, but I was like, I believe in this further education of these demographics, and it's just constantly working towards that goal and getting more groups kind of like, let's all take that 200 people, let's all face the same direction, let's get together and start facing the same direction and start bringing all of our efforts together to make a larger impact rather than, well, SHIP is better than NSBO, Hispanic Philanthropical Society and United Way are better than, no, let's all just work together to make our communities better and make those large impacts. And I'm starting to see that in the states that I've worked in, of just setting those foundations of bringing those STEM professionals together, because now students can see someone who looks like them, speaks like them. I do a lot of K through 12 workshops in elementary schools, so that I do that completely even separate than SHIP, where I do squishy circuits. And a lot of the schools I work with are predominantly Hispanic heritage schools. And most of them never knew what an electrical engineer was. They set the bar at, oh, I'll be an electrician. Electricians make good money. Where it's like, did you know as an intern you can probably make more than the electrician does and probably have probably much nicer kind of work hours, but they kind of preset that bar for themselves without realizing. I mean, these are 8-year-olds setting the bar without even realizing that they're setting a bar really low just because of not knowing. And so it's that education piece of, here's what you can do. And that's where I'm a big advocate of, how do we get there and how do we get there together and bring people along the way. Like, everyone benefits from, I personally believe, from diversity and inclusion. Like, we benefit when we get better walkways for people with disabilities. Like, we all benefit from that. You don't have to be Hispanic to join SHIP. You don't have to be Black to join NSBE, but it's like, if you want that leadership development, that academic excellence, these programs do that. And I'm really big of, let's work together rather than separately.
Thank you. Yeah. Great insight, Mindy. Thank you so much. We're going over to the youngest generation. We have Arturo, Rangel, Lourdes, and then Victor here. So, Lourdes, from your perspective, how do we continue inspiring the next generation to pursue and be successful in STEM?
I kind of agree with Mindy in the sense that role models, kind of some sort of expansion of like, you can be whatever you want, whatever you're passionate about. And there's so many different levels to that. Like, I didn't have that many role models in engineering growing up, and I'm trying to change that for my baby nephews. So like, I want to take them to the UCSD engineering day. I want to take them to a medical thing, just so they can see other people be in different careers and they can kind of decide what they're passionate about, and just kind of instilling also that kind of grit and resilience, because most things in life are not easy. And I think sometimes as a community, we let other people just be like, oh, it's so hard, it's okay to quit. Like, more of the, it's okay. Or, we let students quit too easily on math and science, especially Latino students, as a family and like all that.
Thank you, Lourdes. Great insight. Victor, how do we, from your perspective, how do we inspire the next generation of Hispanics to be successful in STEM careers?
I think it's super important, like, people have mentioned, have role models to look up to, but also instill in them the importance of school. That's something that my parents always said, like, the priority is school, and, a lot of the things are second. So, just teaching that and instilling that value, and also, responsibility. I think my parents, they always told me, be responsible, take accountability for your actions, whatever you do. And I think that is super important. And then there was another thing I was going to mention. Oh man, I'm running out of what I was going to say. Well, but just basically just have a good, strong foundation of your values and just making sure that you stick to them even when things get hard. Oh, that was the other thing, don't give up when things get hard. I think that's super important, especially like if you're gonna pursue I guess a difficult career or in college, there's gonna be times where you're gonna give up and just don't be complacent with, just getting a C, try to aim for an A. Whatnot.
Thank you, Victor. Great insight, great perspective. We shift over to Arturo Rangel Alvarez. Thank you for joining us, sir. You're from Tijuana, from what you
Yes.
told me. And so today we're talking about Hispanic heritage leaders, right? And what we embody as far as values, core values, some of the individuals that we admire as role models. But the question for you right now is how do we, from your perspective, inspire the next generation of Hispanics in STEM?
Yeah. Actually, as you guys were talking about it, I was like, "Well, what should my answer be?" But I think definitely, my case is a little bit different because I came exactly from Tijuana, and then I applied to UCSD, and I actually had an offer, but it was for a year later. So I came here to Michigan, at the University of Victoria Mercy. But I remember when I was starting the process during high school, where I didn't even know where to start from. I didn't know anything at all. And I feel like one important thing that I feel like if I could go back and research more about it would be for you guys that have, let's say, a career with many years of experience, just a little bit of more like not public, but like an info session of insight on how did you guys went from starting to choose a career in STEM and how it like I don't know if you did any internships, how was that process, but more of like a presenting a your path through STEM and through your career until the point you're at right now. Because actually I have done some stuff similar to that where I was like presenting my internships and experiences here in Detroit, Michigan to like younger generations, and just the fact to see other Hispanics presenting about their success, I feel like that's very very inspiring. So I mean, from people like you, Lázaro, where you've worked at General Atomics, Northrop Grumman, that only, well, in my case, it just inspires me of seeing what Hispanic people can do. So I feel like that could be or is a great insight.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good insight, Arturo. Mr. Mike Cruz, over to you. From your perspective, what can we do to inspire and continue inspiring the next generations of Hispanics to pursue STEM?
Well, you've seen me in action, right, with the junior
Yes, sir.
chapters.
Yes, sir.
So I was thinking about, remember I posed the question to the audience, why am I here?
Yeah.
Why am I here at this meeting, this conference, whatever? And if I'm with a panel, I would say, why are we here? And then I ask the audience, usually parents and young students, and we get a plethora of answers, right? You want to learn more about this and that. And I says, no, well, I says, the reason that I'm here and we're here is because you're here. You all made the decision to be here tonight or this afternoon to learn something more about STEM. And we're here to offer you some insight, our perspectives from the panel on our jobs and our lives, being Hispanic and being in STEM. So I guess the basic question is we all need to get out there and confront the community, be ourselves, and share with us our experiences about STEM and being Hispanic at the same time.
Thank you, Mr. Mike Cruz. And I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You and I kind of are partners in crime. We tag up a lot, and we do. As Mindy alluded to, I think SHIP does a great job supporting the collegiate pipeline. However, if we need to go down further, a lot of us, I think there was a question posed by Susana Valdez Wolf when she first took office, and I think it was her one of her first sessions or meetings that she actually did online. She asked the question, where would you actually like or would have liked to have discovered ship, right? So the response was from myself, and I think a lot of us, was somewhere in middle school. Somewhere in middle school would have been nice and beneficial. One, because it would have actually allowed us to discover what the heck does an engineer look like? What do they do? What type of engineering fields are there, right? Going back over to Paul Montoya, if you haven't watched Spare Parts with George Lopez, I encourage you to do so. It's a great movie. It talks about actually, two real teachers from Carl Hayden that got together with a group of underdog students, to say the least, right? And they're high school students. A lot of them were undocumented or had legal status issues, low demographic, low income individuals. And they decided to go to Santa Barbara, and they actually beat MIT for the very first time as high school students. And it just shows the tenacity, the persistence, and the dedication of their group to continue and pursue greatness, right? So that's the whole premise of the story in a nutshell. But it shows that if you put your mind to it, if you really stick to it, as somebody alluded to, you gotta stick to it. And if it gets hard, I think it was Victor, if it gets hard, don't quit. There's a couple of scenes over there when it's actually not going well. Everything's kind of burning up and not really working in the motor head, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a little thinking outside the box idea that they have to soak up some sort of water liquid. And when you see the movie, you'll figure it out. You'll laugh at the whole solution process, but that's literally the whole aspect of it, right? Also, we have Victor Carrera, who referenced Jose Hernandez, A Million Miles Away. That's a real person, as well as Ellen Ochoa. That's a real person. They're Latinos. They're like you and myself. When they were going through elementary school, when they were learning English, when they were going through their grammar and or math classes, went to San Diego State for Ellen Ochoa, and I think Santa Barbara for Jose Hernandez, and they're just people like us. Going back to Arturo's perspective, if we all stop and share our story and our successes as well as obstacles and failures more than anything, I think Arturo and the rest of the younger individuals will definitely learn, appreciate how we've actually been successful and continue moving forward. Yes, Mr. Mike Cruz.
Yeah, these movies are great, getting out and telling our stories. But I was just thinking, we have to convince the establishment, the movie establishment, the audience, that we are important and we need to share our stories. And I just wonder how much effort it was to tell those two stories of Escalante and the robotics. I just wonder what pushback the industry gave the producers to do that. So we need to think about how those people came through and made those movies happen. It just doesn't happen because there's money involved, there's presentation and conception. So I was just thinking, it takes effort, it takes ganas, if you will, to make things happen. So these movies that we enjoy, remember that the people that put them together had to jump some hoops. They had to make it happen. And we're still in a society that pushes back on being Hispanic and minorities. Okay. So the lesson learned, we need to push.
Agreed. We need to push. And then, we talked about, politicians that are supporting. Well, right now we're in a situation where it's interesting. The whole political scene is really tough, to be honest with you. Without getting too political, Alex Padilla, we all saw it a couple months ago. He got pinned down to the ground, right? A lot of people actually know who he is. I'm pretty sure that the individuals that actually cuffed him should have known who he was because he's a public figure. But that just shows you that the whole political scene right now against minorities in general is not a happy place. However, we're not going to back down, as Mr. Mike alluded to. We need to, in our own way, as engineers and as people in STEM, continue moving forward, demonstrating with our actions, with our job, with our efforts that we're moving forward. Continuing going out to, as Mindy alluded to, Noche de Ciencias or doing Equipando Padres or those extracurricular outreach activities for the college students, also reaching out to the high schools and or even the middle school age students to, one, inspire them and continue moving forward. Yes, we're not going to isolate and silo ourselves into just, oh, we're all just Latino Mexican, but we need to accept and come authentically to terms with who we are, right? And this is the core values that we have. Familia, to a lot of us, is very important, right? Our language, for a lot of us, is still very core to who we are. So sometimes we will throw out a couple Spanish words here and there, and it is who we are, right? And that's what I think makes us valuable, and we can continue moving forward. And I think a lot of the students that look up to us or look at us really see and resonate with some of the things that we have and some of the things that we do, and we don't know who's really looking at us and who we are actually motivating and inspiring in some sort of way, form, or shape. And the way that we manage ourselves in social media also resonates a lot and says a lot of who we are. And we might be reaching somebody that might say, hey, I really want to talk to you, learn about what you're doing, what obstacles, what successes you've had, what failures. And if we open up and share that, that's the way, from my perspective, that we continue to motivate individuals to pursue and be successful in careers in STEM. So around the room, Mr. Mike Cruz, any final thoughts?
No, I think you kind of put it all together. We need to keep pushing forward. Don't let up. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of being an engineer in STEM, and share your experiences.
Thank you, sir. Victor Carrera Muro, any final thoughts?
Of course, just be proud of who you are and keep working hard. You set the example for the next generation.
Thank you, Victor. Polo, any final thoughts?
Yeah, sorry, I joined in late because I had a lunch meeting with my customer. But yeah, I mean, I was only here for about 10 minutes. But yeah, you have to never give up. Have to, yes, there is discrimination. I'll use that word, in our industry and stuff like that. Especially, I see it like in the aerospace industry, right, where all my customers in the aerospace industry, they're all white engineers. I'll do that. I'll say that, but yeah, you just got to keep trying. Show how you're different than them, how you're better than them, and yeah, your skills will talk for you, and will allow you to advance in this industry.
Thank you, Polo. Great insight. Lourdes, any final thoughts?
No thoughts. Just thank you everybody for sharing.
Thank you. Paul Montoya, any final thoughts? You might be away. Yes, Paul.
No, just that. I learned a long time ago. You don't have to be in a position of leadership to make a difference. There's a saying: leadership starts at the top, but it's built from the bottom. So right now, that's that's kind of what I am. I'm just a member, just a lifetime member, hanging out, and I talk, anyone who's willing to listen, sometimes when I'm at the conference, I'll talk to Mike, and I'm at this weird age right now where I can talk to, freshman students all the way up to, to some of the, the older, members. I just had my 48th birthday, but when I shaved my beard, I'll tell you a story. I was at the conference and I was standing next to my 19-year-old son, right? And I love picking on the Carnegie Mellon or MIT, whoever they are. I go, hey, he's 19, he's my son. How old am I? And they look at me and they're like, oh, you must be 34. And I go, and I just look at him. So I had him when I was 14, 15. Is that what you're saying? They're like, oh, no, you're 35, 30. So it's, it's kind of funny. But we've been there. It's been a lot of fun. I just hope that before our time is done, that we get to see some of these, some of these things come to fruition. You know what I mean? They're not, in my mind, they're not impossible problems to solve. And I think we can solve them. I think Michael Cruz has the answer. I think Lourdes has the answer. I think Mindy touched on it. Partnership with other organizations to help spearhead one of these problems. But I'll leave you with this. There was a program when I was in college that I heard about and I got involved in. It was my last fellowship, because internships and co-ops were fun, but all the ship leaders always talked about, hey, I went to Cassie. I went to Cassie. I went to Cassie. And we're like, well, what is Cassie? Well, Charles Vela in Washington, D.C., he wanted to break that mold. And so he created a program called CASSI, the Center for the Advancement of Hispanics in Engineering and Education, Science and Engineering Education. And the whole thing of it is we would get a fellowship, we'd go to D.C., we would teach high school students for the first half of the program how to do C++ or some technical class. And then for the second half, we would meet with members of Congress, senators, National Academy of Sciences, and that was to help the participants, the fellows, to figure out the whole concept is how do we become a members of the elite? How do we run for Congress? How do we get in DC? How do we make policy changes? How do we get in these positions? And I wish that program still existed. Charles retired, and so did the program. But that's what you need. You need more Hispanics in positions on district boards. You need more Hispanics in Congress, more Hispanics in positions of influence, so we can change the policies. And let's forget Hispanics. We need more engineers in these positions, so that they can look at the problem, analyze the change, fix the change. Because man, we got high school students graduating high school that don't know how to read. And you read these stories and you can't believe it, but it's happening. And we're not going to win the engineering battles against other countries if we can't solve that problem at home.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Great insight. Going over to Arturo Rangel Alvarez. Any final thoughts?
Just going back to the same thing about sharing our story, and just whenever you're missing some motivation, just remember that, as you guys said, you don't necessarily have to be like a public figure or something for people to admire you, to admire what you're doing, and admire how you're performing or overcoming any barriers. So just keeping that in mind, I think that without even knowing, you are motivating more people to follow your career or professional path. So that's it.
Thank you, Arturo. Great insight. Mindy, any final thoughts?
Just thank you, everyone, for your time. Be proud of who you are, where you came from. And I know this group here is doing the work, and just keep doing that work. So thank you for everything you guys do.
Thank you so much. And with that, we close it out. Thank you. Have a good one. We'll see you next time. Hasta luego. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.